Yo, dude, what's up? I haven't talked in a while. I'm working on this NFT project and we're looking for an animator. Would you be interested? Yeah, I can help you with that. I can animate. Great, I'm glad you're on board. Here's the thing, we need 1,300 unique animations exported as HD GIFs. 1,300? I could probably figure that out. Great, so glad you can do that. We need everything in 3 weeks. This video is brought to you by Newton. As a Canadian, Newton is truly my #1 choice for buying and selling crypto. I have actually been a Newton user well before this video. Recently, due to where I live, I had to make a switch and a friend recommended Newton. And I have been so happy with Newton. The 3 to 5 business day withdrawals are in the past. With Newton, withdrawing funds is virtually instant with the Interac e-transfer. On that note, that is actually the #1 question my friends and family ask me when they ask me about crypto. How do you sell your crypto and transfer back to your bank account? The answer is Newton. Newton makes it simple to enter and exit the crypto market as a Canadian. Knowing I can trade and transfer over 70 cryptocurrencies from my crypto wallet to my bank account without any business day delays is a huge selling factor for me. They have a great selection of coins, all the typical ones you would expect, plus a growing variety of altcoins. And the best part, getting started with Newton is simple. Step 1, create your account, verify your information, fund your account using e-transfer, wire transfer, pre-authorized debit, and of course, crypto. Step 3, start trading. It's as easy as that. Newton's simple and clean design makes trading crypto a breeze, even if it's your first time. Just make sure you do your research so you know what you're buying. And the best part about Newton is the fees, or lack of fees, I should say. 0 fees on deposits and withdrawals, which was not the case on my previous exchange. And when using the exchange, the fees are very minimal. They vary from coin to coin. Check out Newton, there's a link down below. If you sign up using the referral link in the description, we will both earn a $25 referral bonus after your first $100 trade. Not bad. Back to the video. First up, let's take a look at our animations that I'm going to be breaking down today. This NFT project was created by a good friend of mine. He is a graphic designer artist and asked me if I could animate for him. It is called Baby Alien Division on the Chronos Network. And in this particular case, we were animating a free airdrop that would go to all the holders of the NFT project. So when we finished animating these, they just got airdropped to everyone. Interesting fact, this was actually the first ever fully animated project on the Chronos Network. And I think that's pretty special. If you are interested in the project, we are moving to Ethereum. So if that's your thing, stay tuned. Just a heads up, this video is not a step-by-step guide. It's more of a behind-the-scenes breakdown. This is more of a look into how to do this yourself rather than me guiding you on how to do your project. A lot of this content is going to be unique to my project and it may or may not translate into what you're doing. So this is not a walkthrough. It's more of a starting point for you to learn from. Anyways, to the animations, we needed to create over 1,000 animations. And I knew we were going to be doing this by animating individual assets and then putting them into a generator to export the final GIFs. The only problem is that I've never quite done anything like this. I knew that we would need like a main template where we would animate subcomps. So for example, you would have your universal motion of the UFO going up and down, and then each individual item would also be animated, but they would be pre-comped from the main comp. This will make more sense when we get into After Effects, and then we got to export them. Now there's a lot I could talk about, and there's a lot that I learned while doing this.
Can I quietly play video games?
Claire's gonna play video games. Yeah, so there's a lot I could talk about. I learned a lot through this process, so hopefully I can share some of the major stuff. For example, when I went into this project, I thought it'd be exporting GIFs and layering the GIFs to make a master GIF. That is a terrible idea. Do not do that. As soon as you export GIF, you lose all quality. So if you start compiling, what you want to do is maintain quality as much as possible until the very last step. So exporting everything ProRes, and then at the end, layering the ProRes and exporting a GIF. Before we jump into After Effects, let me just show you the files we were working with. So I requested from my friend to export everything as PNGs. So here we have the 5 folders. Each folder is the layer of the spaceship. First layer would be the background, and then we would have the trail. Then we would have the hull color, followed by the hull, and then the cockpit, and finally the weapons. Inside each of these folders are more folders with the different assets we're going to use for animating. Let's jump into one of the After Effects files. So the first thing I did was I created an After Effects project and created a subcomp for each one of those layers. So background, hull, trail, cockpit, weapons. And the first thing I want to do is create some universal motion that I can parent those subcomps to. So I started by creating a null object and started keyframing the position. So for the motion of the UFO, I just kind of wanted it to float up and down, very smooth. And it was just going to do one loop for the whole thing. So set the keyframe for the start, go to the middle, I'm going to bring it down a bit, and I'm just going to match what I already have here. And then I'm going to come back up to that starting position of 1000. And we want it to be nice and smooth, so I'm going to highlight them all, right click, easy ease. And one more thing, I'm going to separate the X and Y, and actually I'm just going to unkeyframe the X position, so we just have the Y position. So now we just have a null object that moves up and down, just like that. Next thing I want to do is parent all these subcomps except the background, because obviously the background's not moving. And parent them to that null object. So in my case, I called that ship controller. Now let's jump into some of our subcomps. Here's the first weapon I animated. It was a beam. This one honestly was a little bit messy, but it consisted of a few different layers. So in my case, because a lot of these animations were kind of style specific, I had the animator kind of export like a few frames as almost like a sprite sheet. So in this case, it starts off as its first position, and then I added a glow to that position, and then I faded in the second position, and then I added a bunch of glow on top of that. And if you notice here, I didn't have to worry about any motion in this pre-comp because all that universal motion is going to happen in our main comp. So one tricky thing with this process is we have to keep every possibility in mind. For example, in this animation here, the UFO is supposed to have like a see-through camouflage, which means the trail behind it has to perfectly cut right at the edge. Every single trail has to have that perfect cutout, which really isn't that hard. That just means that your trail has to alpha invert matte the ship, which really isn't that complicated, but if we take a look at just the trail there, you can kind of see what that looks like. And on that note, when you're designing, you have to limit yourself so that every attribute is within its layer. So you can't really have layers crossing or going in front of each other. If it's on top, it has to be on top. So there were some design limitations. So what I ended up doing is taking my master template and duplicating it for each layer. So for example, I had a background template, a hull template, a cockpit template. I ended up actually put the hulls and hull color together just because they're kind of similar. And then once you have your sub animations in there, you just isolate the one that you want to export. So in this case, we're going to be exporting this clear camouflage UFO, and then we're going to throw that into our render queue. In the render queue here, I created a template called ProRes Alpha 1000, meaning that it is ProRes Alpha and I am downscaling to 1000 by 1000 because in this case, a lot of the PNGs were 2000 by 2000 and they were just a little bit too big. So let me show you my export settings. So first we want to click format and make sure we have QuickTime enabled, and then format options, ProRes 4444, and then for channels do RGB plus alpha. And okay, boom, that's it. That's all you need. Now, super interesting thing. I did not realize transparent video doesn't actually exist. What does exist is a alpha channel that is basically just a matte that will tell your video file what's transparent. So think of it as two layers. You have RGB and you have your alpha layer. Your alpha layer is just like a track matte. It's a Luma matte that tells this one what to do. That being said, whatever your native background color on your animation, it's still gonna be there. So if you have a bright green background, even if you export in alpha, that background's still gonna be there, but your alpha matte's gonna tell it to not be there. The reason I say that is because once you start working with those files, sometimes, especially when you have blurs or feathered edges, those original background colors can bleed through back into your layers. So a problem I had is my default background color was black. My composition background color was black. And when I layered all my ProRes Alpha files into a GIF, it created like black shadows on everything. So I learned that you either want to go like 50% neutral gray or all the way white. It really depends on how you're using these layers, like what the background's going to be. In my case, a majority of our backgrounds were bright colors. It was best for me to choose white on all my layers. If your scenes are very dark, it's probably best to go like neutral gray or like a dark gray. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's this gray here that you're looking at right now. In order to change that, you can click on your composition settings, and change it here. Most of my layers I had white, and that'll do you good. That's good. So I think when it comes to like the main template thing, there's not really much to talk about because there really wasn't much to it. It was a null object moving up and down. All the other animations were in the subcomps of the actual layers. So let's take a look at one of my favorite animations we did. So take a look at this composition here. Right now I just have the cabin disabled. When I go inside my cabin, I have a bunch of other pre-comps. So I took all the cabins that I made and kind of put them all into one subcomp. And the one I want to look at is Astronaut. This was one of my favorite animations we did. You can see here he's just holding on to the back of the spaceship, and we called it Huddle. And when we combine that with the motion of the spaceship, I just think it looks really good. So starting with the astronaut's head, it just removes in reaction to the ship going up and down. Super simple, just 2 keyframes, and I put it on loop. Now I did pre-compose this motion so that I could shift it off time. So essentially I don't want the head to move exactly when the UFO moves. I kind of want it to like move independently and a little bit rubbery, like a rubber band. So I ended up pre-composing it and then just like shifting it, which you can see here. So you can see I like just broke it into 2 layers. And it's such a simple effect. You move the head up and down at the right timing. So then the legs are super easy. I just put a wave warp effect on there. So like if I wanted to, I could do something like 50 on these. And then they would be ridiculous. Some SpongeBob stuff. And then I just added like a light rotation that kind of just goes up a little bit, down a little bit on the legs. Again, super simple effect, but I think it just looks so good. I mean, the animation is only as good as the design, and I think Dan really killed it. Okay, so now let's take a look at our ProRes Alpha folder. I apologize, it's a bit of a mess here, but let's jump into our weapons, just so I can give you a bit of an idea of what we're looking at here. This is the white background I was referring to earlier. It's just essentially each object is rendered out on their own. And then all our trails. One of our traits, we wanted to have no trail on our UFO. So I just exported a blank, which I'm sure I could have coded in, but I didn't want to do that. Here, the chemtrail is actually white, so you can't see it at all in this preview. Actually, if I open it up in VLC, we might be able to see it. Yeah, so there it is in VLC. Antimatter was a good one. I like that. For the random generation part, unfortunately, I can't afford to open source my code. If you are a developer and you need help, let me know, message me on Twitter. If you're looking for someone to do the randomization for you, let me know, I can help you with that. But let me try and explain how I did it. So I wrote a Python script that would take a look at 5 folders, each folder being a layer in the final render or the final GIF. So we had our background, our hull, cockpit, trails. We would grab each folder in those orders. We would grab one video file from each folder at random using a rarity table and layer them in the correct order. We would then export an MP4 of the animation, and then we would convert that MP4 into a high-res GIF. Once your GIF is made, you can delete the MP4. Now there's one big step that we cannot forget. We need to create metadata for each one of these NFTs. In our Python script, we are going to create a dictionary that will grab each folder as the trait and each file name as the value of that trait. So for example, in this folder, we have backgrounds, and we named each video file the name of the background. And in our Python script, we need to create metadata. So if we take a look at one of these metadatas, we can see in this attribute dictionary is a list, and it contains a dictionary of a value, which would be the layer, and the trait type, which would be the folder. And once we have all the metadata created, we then want to create another Python script that can inject our uploaded GIFs that are on the IPFS. Are you following me? We also want to populate a number for each one of these animations. And in this case, the description will be the same for all of them. And then once you've figured all of that out, you can write a smart contract in Solidity. Wow, that's the fun part. I have learned a lot recently. Awesome, well I hope this video was helpful. Thank you to our sponsor Newton for sponsoring this video. Take a look at Newton, try it out. Totally free to do. And seriously, if you need any help with this stuff, message me on Twitter. I will be happy to point you in the right direction. Thanks for watching, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe too. Peace.